You know, getting into motorcycling can be hard enough, not to mention all the stuff you have to learn on the motorcycle, but there's a whole motorcycle language that you got to learn as well. This week on MCrider, we'll look at 20 terms that may be new to our new motorcycle riders out there. You may have heard the term cafe racer and wondered what the heck that is. Well, the term was coined in the UK, where back in the day riders would mod out their motorcycle with loud pipes, lowered handlebars, and rear set pegs, and they'd race around town, usually from cafe to cafe. That's where the name came from, in hopes of picking up girls or just showing off the ride. Today, it's usually a reference to a style of motorcycle that carries some of the traditions of the older cafe racers back in the day. Countersteering, that's a term that you hear a lot. Motorcycle turns by leaning, and the way you make a motorcycle lean is you countersteer. So if I want to turn right, I push on that right hand grip, motorcycle leans to the right, it turns right. If I want to turn left, I push out or down on that left hand grip, motorcycle leans left, and it turns left. So some people ride a cafe racer, some people ride what they call a bar hopper. A bar hopper is not a particular style of motorcycle like a cafe racer. A bar hopper is a term used to describe a motorcycle that would be used from riding to bar. Go to one bar, have a drink or two, mount up on the bar hopper, and ride down to the next bar. Bar hoppers live a dangerous life when they're not found parked outside the bar. Parts of them can often be found in salvage yards across the country. So let's talk about the friction zone. And you hear me talk about the friction zone a lot on MCrider, and if you take a new rider class, you'll hear them talking about it there as well. So the friction zone, if I squeeze that clutch all the way in, I removed all power from the rear wheel with the bike in gear. All right, I release the clutch all the way out, all the power is going to the rear wheel. But if I squeeze that clutch in, give it a little bit of throttle, and I slowly start to release that clutch out, at some point it's going to begin to get partial power to that rear wheel. That area in the clutch is called the friction zone. Friction zone is critical for starting a motorcycle out smoothly, and it's critical for doing slow speed maneuvers. Friction zone, turning your head, counterweighting is going to help you lean that motorcycle further and make those slow speed maneuvers that are difficult for a lot of new riders to get accomplished. Cager is an interesting term. It's usually used in a derogative manner. The way a motorcycle references a car, they'll call them a cager. They'll say a cager pulled out in front of them. So what they mean by that is somebody driving a car or somebody who's in a cage, a cager. Lean angle. It's what I'm doing right now, right? I'm leaning it up against this tree. Lean angle, when it comes to motorcycle terms, is the amount of lean that the motorcycle's got. The more it leans, the sharper it's going to turn. So when you're doing those slow speed maneuvers, if you carry a little bit of speed into that, 8 to 10 miles per hour, you can lean the motorcycle over further and you can make sharper turns. You see lean angle a lot also out on the track. Those MotoGP riders are getting maximum lean angle out of that motorcycle to get around that corner as fast as they possibly can and as sharp as they possibly can. So what do we mean by counterbalancing, right? You do it a lot in slow speed maneuvers. So if I'm making a tight U-turn and I'm turning to the right, turn my head and eyes to the right, right? I've got the clutch in the friction zone, but I'm gonna counterbalance the motorcycle. So the motorcycle's leaning to the right, I'm going to shift my weight over to the left. You'll feel it particularly on that left foot peg as you're shifting your weight on the motorcycle. You can even move one butt cheek off the side of the seat. That way you're helping lean the motorcycle over, but you're counterbalancing the weight of the motorcycle. Motorcycle leans this way, your body weight leans that way. It helps keep the motorcycle more balanced, making those tight turns. So trail braking, as you're approaching a corner, you're using your brakes to slow the motorcycle down, and then you're staying on, or you're remaining on that front brake to keep the forks compressed, to keep weight on that tire. As the motorcycle leans into the corner, you're keeping slight pressure on that front brake to get the motorcycle into the corner and then you're trailing off of the brakes. That's where trail braking comes from. You're trailing off of the brake, and you're trading braking for lean angle. It helps keep the motorcycle more balanced and more weight on the front tire, and because it compresses the forks, it shortens the wheelbase of the motorcycle up as well, making the motorcycle turn sharper. You ever heard anybody say they had a get off? For a motorcyclist, a get off is a crash. It's not like getting off the motorcycle at a rest area. It's crashing the motorcycle and getting off the motorcycle in a less than favorable manner. So ABS is a good feature to have. Man, I recommend it for all new riders and experienced riders especially. More and more motorcycles are coming with ABS standard. So it's a good thing to have on a motorcycle. What it does is it keeps the tire from locking up. So if you over apply the brakes or you grab the brakes in a panic, it's going to keep that tire from locking up. And one misconception about ABS is people think it will help them stop a motorcycle quicker. It won't help you stop the motorcycle quicker, but it is going to keep you upright if you over apply the brakes. So we described what ABS is. What the heck is cornering ABS? Well, if you watch my videos on stopping quickly in a curve, you know that one of the techniques is to straighten the motorcycle up before you apply the brakes aggressively, or be gentle on the brakes, and then as you decrease your lean angle, then you can start applying more brakes. Cornering ABS helps with that. It's actually ABS in a corner, so it accounts for the motorcycle being leaned over, and it applies the appropriate amount of brake without you losing traction. So that's a good safety feature if you need to stop quickly in a corner. Cornering ABS will help with that. Normal ABS, not so much. It's built for riding a motorcycle straight up and down, and it's only going to help you in those straight up situations where the motorcycle is running in a straight line. So we've talked a lot about safety features to help you get stopped. What about safety features to help you get going? That's where traction control kicks in. It's kind of like ABS in reverse. When you roll on the throttle, if you over apply the throttle instead of that rear tire spinning, traction control helps keep you planted on the ground and helps keep traction by cutting power to the rear wheel. Kind of similar to the friction zone is what it feels like. It cuts power to the rear wheel. I've had it apply on the Gull Wing before. One time when I was getting out on a 2-lane highway, I was rolling on the throttle pretty aggressively, getting up to highway speed, and I hit a patch of oil just right there at the edge of the freeway. Instead of things getting crazy and the rear end slipping out from me, the traction control kicked in. Felt a little bit of decrease in power, but the motorcycle stayed upright, continued doing what it was supposed to be doing. And as soon as I got over that oil slick, got traction back to the tire, that engine power kicked back into the rear wheel, and I was on my way. So it's a good feature to have. Works good in rain as well to help keep that tire planted when you're rolling on the throttle. So let's talk about a couple of terms that you may see associated with motorcycle crashes. The first is a high side crash. So we got a motorcycle here, they're going through a corner. Usually what happens is the rider applies too much rear brake, or it could be too much throttle coming out of the corner, causing that rear tire to lose traction. So the rear tire starts to slide out. The rider abruptly releases the brakes or the throttle, causing the motorcycle to regain traction, and that bucks the rider, so the rider is bucked over the high side of the motorcycle. This causes some other problems because now you got a rider who not only went over the high side of the motorcycle, but that motorcycle's behind you as you're sliding down the road and it's tumbling, looking for a place to land. Another type of crash that you'll hear is called a low side. So the motorcycle's leaned over in the corner. Something causes the tires to lose traction, either too much lean angle. Sometimes what you'll see on Harleys is a hard part will hit the ground and it'll lift the tires up off the ground if you drag the pegs too hard going through a corner. Or they apply, you know, the rear brake and keep that rear brake applied, or the front brake, causing the tires to lose traction and the motorcycle just slides out from under you. That's a low side crash. It's much preferable to a high side crash because the motorcycle falls in front of you. You don't have nearly as far to fall, and then hopefully the motorcycle will get on away from you there, and you're not having to worry about it tumbling on top of you like you would in a high side crash. Another term you'll hear on occasion, you'll hear somebody call another rider a squid. It's not a flattering term. If somebody calls you a squid, they're calling you a new rider, and they're typically the ones you see most often associated with sport bike riders. They're wearing shorts, tank top, flip-flops, no gear. It's an overconfident guy, new on a motorcycle, but he doesn't want to act like he's new, so he tries to do stuff that shows he's got this thing down, but what he's really doing is showing he doesn't have much experience on a motorcycle yet. So now you know what a squid is. If somebody calls you a squid, you can either deny it by wearing your gear, or you can own up to it and change your ways. Got lots of videos on MCrider to unsquid you if somebody calls you a squid. It's a tank slapper. You may have heard the term tank slapper before. Tank slapper can be caused by a whole lot of different things. Could be a bad tire on the front, could be problems with the forks, could be the motorcycle is overloaded or the load on the motorcycle is out of balance. That causes what's called a tank slapper. The front tire starts to vibrate back and forth. It can get really violent, that shaking back and forth, and it comes up through the handlebars. Can cause some pretty serious accidents. I've got a video on tank slappers. I'll have a link to that in the description. But a tank slapper, you want to make sure your motorcycle's in good condition, that it's ready to ride, that the load is balanced on the motorcycle, and you don't have too much weight for what the motorcycle is designed for, or it could cause a tank slapper. So twisties, you might have heard somebody talk about riding the twisties. Twisties are curves. It's what every rider dreams of. It's what I don't have a whole lot of here in North Texas. But riding the twisties, just riding the curves. So ADV is a term you'll hear a lot. What does ADV mean? Well, it stands for adventure motorcycle. It's a big adventure touring motorcycle like my BMW GS. It's made for touring, go on an adventure, but it's also set up so you can ride it off-road. So ADV motorcycle, adventure motorcycle. ATGAT, you may have heard the term ATGAT before. ATGAT's an acronym, stands for all the gear all the time. So a rider who's ATGAT, full face helmet, jacket, pants, boots, gloves, every time they ride a motorcycle, all the gear, all the time. So this last one is one of my least favorite terms, and it's one you'll hear quite often. Well, probably not quite as often as the phrase that people who are encountered by tailgaters say that they carry bolts or marbles in their pockets and drop them. And look at my video on tailgaters. There must be 100 comments on there, somebody saying they carry marbles in their pocket. And there are a lot of marble carrying motorcyclists, if that's true. But you hear this one almost as much. It's one of my least favorite, probably a little bit better than the term bar hopper, but the phrase I had to lay it down. So what the rider's attempting to say is that their amazing skill as a motorcyclist allowed them to lock up the tires and gently lay the motorcycle down on its side rather than hitting an object in the road, a car that pulled out in front of them, or a corner that was sharper than they expected. So they just easily laid the motorcycle down. What it really means is I didn't have the skills to avoid the crash, and I crashed all on my own before ever reaching the threat in the road. Learn emergency braking, cornering, and swerving. Don't lay it down like they say. It's such a bad term. Every time you lay it down, you've had a crash. So what you've been trying to avoid to do, you create all on your own. Man, that one just makes me shake my head. Don't lay it down. Learn emergency braking, learn swerving, learn to ride your motorcycle. Till next week, this is Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road.